Take a moment to look around your living space. I am willing to bet you have a graveyard somewhere in your house. It isn't the dramatic kind, but rather the quiet, dusty kind. The guitar leaning against the wall that hasn't been touched in months. The stack of language books you bought with such high hopes, but barely cracked open. Or that half-finished coding project still sitting on your laptop like an unanswered message. Every single time you notice these things, you feel a small, sharp pinch of guilt. You remember the initial fire you felt when you started, how you consumed information like you were starving, and how you were absolutely certain that this was finally the one. But then, right when things got serious or the novelty began to fade, the feeling just evaporated. You got bored, you drifted, and you moved on to the next shiny thing, leaving behind a trail of abandoned interests that feel like a record of personal failure. Society has all kinds of names for this behavior, and none of them are kind. You have likely been called flaky, undisciplined, or inconsistent. You've heard the classic label, jack of all trades, master of none. In a world that rewards narrow specialization and linear progress, your jumping between interests makes you look confused or unfocused. You might even feel a sense of shame, comparing yourself to people who chose one path early and stuck to it forever, while you feel stuck in a cycle of novice highs and sudden quits. This cultural programming teaches you that success means choosing one thing and sticking to it forever, making you feel defective for not fitting the template. You apologize for your scattered resume and your inability to just pick something already, feeling an internal conflict between a part of you that wants freedom and a part that craves stability and approval. But I am here to tell you clearly the diagnosis you've been given is wrong. Your brain is not broken. It is simply operating on a different system than the one society was built for. You aren't lacking grit or discipline. You are actually following a deeply biological and evolutionary foundation shared by history's greatest polymaths, inventors, and explorers. What you possess is what psychologists call the knowledge instinct, a high drive for curiosity, novelty, and pattern discovery. While the average person might get dopamine from completion or mastering a single goal, your brain is wired to get its electric dopamine hit from the rate of learning and the speed of acquiring new information. Your reward system is optimized for exploration rather than exploitation, refusing to limit itself to a single vertical slice of the world. The reason you quit isn't a moral failing, it's a biological mechanism called reward prediction error. When you start something new, like photography or coding, everything is novel and the learning curve is steep. You go from zero to something very quickly, and your brain floods you with dopamine because the rate of information gain is massive. It feels like falling in love. But eventually, you reach the plateau, where you understand the core logic and the mystery fades. For your specific brain type, the dopamine doesn't just taper off, it shuts off abruptly. You aren't refusing to act because you're lazy, you're refusing to act without fuel. From your subconscious perspective, the cost of continuing the final 20% of a project suddenly outweighs the perceived reward, leading to what feels like a give-up decision. This trait was once a vital evolutionary advantage for the tribe. While specialists were needed to optimize known tasks, polymaths served as the vanguard of awareness, the innovators who connected ideas across different fields in ways others couldn't see. Every major breakthrough in history, from Steve Jobs merging calligraphy with technology to Einstein playing the violin to think through physics, came from people who refused to stay in one box. Your inability to stick to one thing is actually your brain's refusal to limit its capacity for innovation. You are building a horizontal network of understanding where psychology informs design, history shapes technology, and philosophy changes business. You solve problems by importing solutions from completely unrelated fields, adapting faster because you have trained in multiple contexts. You were never meant to fit into one box. You were meant to integrate everything you love. To navigate this, you need a new framework, which I call the horizontal web. Unlike the traditional vertical ladder of success, which demands you climb a single narrow path to the top, the horizontal web recognizes that your growth is horizontal before it becomes vertical. Imagine your interests not as isolated projects to be finished, but as nodes in a vast, interconnected geometry of knowledge. In this framework, your life is a playground of playgrounds, where each abandoned hobby isn't wasted time, but a note in a web of understanding that specialists will never have. Instead of asking, what is the one thing I should do? You ask, what kind of problems do I want to solve? This shift allows your diverse skills to work together as pillars of a single, unique identity, rather than competing interests fighting for your attention. To manage the biological reality of this web, you must implement specific protocols to train the physical part of your brain responsible for tenacity. This area is the anterior midcingulate cortex, or the AMCC. Think of the AMCC as a muscle inside your head that only fires when you do something you don't want to do. If a task is fun, the AMCC sleeps. If it's boring or frustrating, the AMCC engages. For many dabblers, this muscle has atrophied because, in the past, every time boredom or frustration appeared, you put the weight down and quit. This isn't permanent, as the AMCC is plastic and can grow at any age. By leaning into discomfort, you can thicken this region, turning the weakness of a dabbler into the strength of a master polymath. The first protocol is the 15% push. When you are practicing a hobby and you feel that familiar intense urge to quit, the moment the dopamine fades and the frustration starts, do not stop immediately, but also do not try to force yourself to work for another 4 hours. Instead, just do 15% more. If you intended to read 10 pages but want to quit at 3, read to page 4. That tiny gap, that small moment of doing what you didn't want to do, is the rep that thickens the AMCC. Over time, this progressive overload builds the capacity to handle the long, boring plateaus that lead to true mastery. For those who may have ADHD, a second protocol is cognitive scaffolding. If your dopamine system and executive functions work differently, internal grit alone might lead to burnout. You need external structures, task visualization, which involves breaking projects into tiny, visible steps, time visualization, using timers to prevent feeling trapped in an endless task, and body doubling, which is working alongside someone else to borrow their focus. You can also use gamification to add artificial rewards that replace the missing dopamine during the boring phases of a project. This isn't cheating, it's engineering a ramp for your brain to succeed. The third protocol is the stimulus control reset to address boredom intolerance. We live in a world of supernormal stimuli, TikTok, Instagram, instant rewards that flood our brains with effortless dopamine. Compared to this high-intensity noise, the quiet work of mastery feels like suffocation because your nervous system is overstimulated. You must practice lowering the background noise by removing your phone and turning off music during work sessions. You need to let yourself feel bored, because boredom isn't a signal to quit. It is the clean slate required for your brain to shift from consumption to creation and deep encoding. However, be aware of the secret barrier, known as the extinction burst or the dopamine withdrawal phase. As you try to push through a plateau, your brain will scream for novelty, making the task feel even more unbearable than it actually is. This is your subconscious trying to force you back into your old pattern of quitting to find cheaper dopamine elsewhere. Recognizing this as a temporary biological glitch rather than a character flaw is the key to surviving the dip. If you can prove to yourself that you can tolerate this discomfort, even for just 6 months on one chosen interest, you will unlock a new identity. You'll realize you weren't broken. You were just untrained, and you are now a polymath in training. Beyond the protocols, it is essential to reframe how you view the horizontal nature of your growth. In a world that celebrates linear progress, your path may look like a chaotic zigzag, but what often goes unnoticed is that you are building depth through diversity. While specialists go deep into a single vertical slice of knowledge, you are constructing a horizontal network where your understanding of one field, such as psychology, directly informs your approach to another, like design or business strategy. This isn't a lack of focus. It is the process of becoming an innovator who synthesizes diverse knowledge, recognizing patterns across disciplines that linear thinkers simply cannot see. Every abandoned hobby is not a tombstone of failure, but a note in a vast web of understanding that allows you to solve problems by importing solutions from completely unrelated fields. To solidify this new operating system, you should consider a 6-month experiment designed not for the mastery of a specific skill, but for the mastery of your own biology. Choose one interest, any interest, and commit to it for 180 days with the specific goal of intentionally hitting the plateau. The aim is to reach that moment where the novelty high evaporates and the dopamine shuts off, just so you can practice the 15% push when the perceived energy cost feels the highest. By staying in the deliberate practice phase, even when it feels like suffocation, you prove to your brain that you can operate without the constant fuel of novelty. You are not trying to become a world expert in 6 months. You are training your anterior midcingulate cortex to handle the weight of boredom and frustration so that your curiosity finally has the physical muscle to support your ambitions. Finally, You must stop asking society's favorite question, what do you want to be? And start asking, what kind of problems do I want to solve? Shifting your focus from a rigid job title to a specific set of challenges allows your diverse skills to work together as a cohesive force rather than competing interests. This transition allows you to stop betraying parts of yourself just to appear consistent to others, which is the primary cause of the quiet sense of emptiness and burnout many polymaths face. Your journey is nonlinear because you are an explorer, extracting what you need from various experiences and carrying those unique insights into your next chapter. You were never meant to fit into one box. You were built to integrate everything you love and redefine success on your own terms. As you move forward, I want you to adopt an internal script for those moments of self-doubts. My curiosity is not a flaw, it is my compass. My shifting interests are not failures. They are signals pointing toward a path only I can explore. You have spent years trying to fix something that was never broken. Your goal now is not to become a world expert in everything overnight, but to experience the power of deliberate practice and to see what happens when you finally lift the weight of the plateau. You are giving yourself permission to design a life that reflects how your mind actually works rather than how society says it should. To help you navigate this transition and structure your horizontal web, I've put together a resource for you called the Polymath Field Guide. It contains detailed breakdowns of the 15% push and the cognitive scaffolding tools we discussed today, along with templates to help you track your horizontal growth across multiple interests without feeling overwhelmed. You can download it for free at the link in the description. Remember, your wandering attention isn't the problem. Trying to force it into someone else's framework is. I hope this gave you something useful you can actually try. I'll see you in the next one.